Hello scholars, thanks for visiting the Info Scholar channel. People have asked me, when was the first time you saw a dead body? The first time I ever saw someone dead outside a funeral setting happened when I was about 11 years old. It was fall, so it was also hunting season. We lived in a rural area about 10 miles from the Talladega International Speedway. When there was a race, it sounded like the race cars were passing by on the road in front of the house. But as I've said, it was fall, so there was no race that day. My brother, who is 18 months older than me, along with myself, were outside chopping and splitting wood one Saturday afternoon. Our home shared a driveway with a gate that afforded people access to Bruner Valley, which was a popular hunting destination. My brother and I hunted deer and turkey there frequently. So it was no surprise when a big green four-wheel drive truck with 3 men inside pulled into our yard, and one of the men called out to us and asked if they were close to Bruner Valley. My brother directed them to the gate, and they thanked us and went on into the valley to start their hunt. "Out-of-towners," my brother said aloud. After a little while, one of our father's friends pulled into the yard. My dad came out onto the porch and the two men stood there talking. While they were having a conversation, another truck pulled into the yard, an old dusty white Ford occupied by a single man. When he got out, my brother elbowed me and said, "Look at that." The man was wearing an insulated orange jumpsuit, which covered him from head to ankles, and an orange hunting cap as well to top it off. Only his boots were black. He approached the porch where my brother and his friend were talking, and my brother and I knocked off and sauntered over so as to be in earshot. The man, like the other men a few minutes before, was asking how to get into Bruner Valley. My father looked the man up and down and with a smile directed him to the nearby gate. The man thanked him and left. Another out-of-towner, I supposed. After he had gone, my father's friend said, "I don't know, boys. I think he's taking a big risk wearing those black boots." We all laughed, and shortly thereafter, as my brother and I went back to our chores, a black Jeep Cherokee passed on the road, slowed, and turned into the far end of the driveway, going straight off into Bruner Valley. "Well, what do you know?" my brother observed. "At least there's one person who knows how to get to Bruner Valley." We both chuckled and continued to chop and split wood. We were taking our time because our dad had given us 2 chores to complete, the first being splitting and stacking the wood we'd chopped down the day before, the second being patching the barn roof. Neither of us was in a big hurry to get to that, as it involved sticky hot tar and heights. During a pause in our work, 3 shots rang out deep in the valley. Boom, boom, boom. "Someone got him a buck," my brother said aloud. But after a couple of moments, we heard 3 more shots, the same cadence of shots. Boom, boom, boom. My brother and I looked at each other quizzically, but then we shrugged and went back to work. A length of the road leading back to the valley was plainly visible from our backyard. Later, as we were splitting the last of our firewood, we observed the big green four-wheel drive, tearing out of the valley at a high rate of speed. There were trees between our house and the valley gate that you couldn't see through, but we heard the gravel flying as the driver hit the brakes to turn into our yard. As the truck came to a stop, one man hopped out. He looked like he was in shock. "Boys, are your parents home? I need to use y'all's telephone." All this happened in the days before cell phones or even the internet. If you had a phone, it was on the wall or a counter at your house, and that was it. It was your only means of communication. Well, by this time, my father's friend and he had moved into the house, but when they heard the truck arrive, they came back out along with my mother. "I need to use your folks' phone, sir," the man said to my dad. "There's been an accident. A man's been shot." All the adults went back into the house while the man made his call. My brother and I went over to the barn and got everything ready to patch the roof. We even leaned the ladder against the barn. And then we just hung around to see what happened next. A sheriff's deputy was the first to arrive, followed by an ambulance. Now, the road into Bruner Valley was deeply rutted and muddy, so the deputy crawled into the green four-wheel drive with the hunter behind the wheel, leaving his patrol car in our yard. From the backyard, we saw that the truck took the road with little difficulty, but the low ambulance had to stop and laboriously turn around and come back. They just couldn't make it up that road. The EMTs came into our yard, conversed with my father, nodded towards my dad's big red flatbed, which was also an all-wheel drive. After a few minutes, my father went into the house and got his keys, and the EMTs and he piled into the red truck and set out for the valley too. My brother and I had moved close to the truck in an effort to tag along, but a stern look from my mother was all it took to dissuade us. So we loitered by the barn and waited for events to transpire. Eventually, all the vehicles we'd seen that day came back out of the valley in line. My dad's red truck, the green truck occupied by the same three men from earlier, the black Jeep, and trailing last, the old white Ford. They all pulled into the yard, which was beginning to look a little like a used car lot, with all the hunters' vehicles and the ambulance and a deputy's car all parked there. I noticed two things. The old white Ford was now being driven by the deputy, and there was something in the bed of my father's big red flatbed, covered in a camouflage tarpaulin. Two black-booted feet stuck out from under the tarpaulin. Everyone got out of their vehicles and formed a loose semicircle. My brother went over and hovered, taking it all in. I followed. My dad was so wrapped up in what was going on, he didn't notice us. It came to light that the man in orange was the dead man under the tarp. My dad's friend's joke had proven oddly prescient. The man from the Jeep Cherokee was defending himself to the deputy, who at this point was just listening. The dead man had been sitting in a tree stand about 50 feet off the forest floor when the man who drove the black Jeep Cherokee fired up into the tree with a .30-06 3 times, and then reloaded and fired 3 more times. Boom, boom, boom. The man in orange had been hit twice, once out of each salvo of 3 shots, first through the leg, then through the body, and then there was that whole 50-foot fall down through the tree limbs. The Jeep Cherokee man loudly proclaimed his innocence, claiming the shooting was an accident. The deputy spoke up. "Sir, can you tell me any good reason that you fired 6 shots at this man by accident? He was shot out of a tree stand." The guy said, "I thought he was a red-headed woodpecker." After that, the deputy told him to turn around, and he put cuffs on him and placed him in the squad car. But here's the crazy part. All 5 of those hunters were, by coincidence, out-of-towners, but they were also all from the same small town. The hunting party of 3 had no idea the other 2 men were coming to Bruner Valley that day, but since they were all from the same town, they knew a lot of each other's business. As it turned out, the dead man was a well-to-do man in their community. The 2 older men knew him personally and said he was the kind of guy who would give you the shirt off his back. He was a deacon in his church, as well as being a successful real estate agent. The party of 3 were 2 older men and one of those men's sons. It was he who had driven out after the shooting to use the phone. The other 2 men had remained behind to make sure the shooter didn't tamper with the crime scene. The younger man had worked with the killer, doing construction work the previous year. While working together building a house, the man had complained to his co-workers about having borrowed $20,000 from the real estate guy to start his own contracting business, and now the real estate man was threatening to take him to court if he didn't pay up. He was very stressed out about this and was trying to figure out ways to come up with the money. It was later discovered that the killer had been in a sporting goods store the previous weekend when the real estate guy had been discussing with the store staff his intention to take a hunting trip to Bruner Valley the following weekend, as a client had told him the hunting there was just great. He had probably decided then and there to follow the older man deep into the woods and discharge his debt to the man forever. The deputy took the man away, and the EMTs loaded the dead man into their ambulance and took him away to the morgue in Anniston. I remember hearing that the killer got life in prison without parole. It seemed like that happened years before at the time, as I was almost finished with high school when I heard. Thanks for watching. Please comment, hit like, and subscribe, and have a great day.